Good afternoon, all. So this is Nishant here, and thank you for joining us for this exciting session with Shyamla Deshpande as a part of the People Matters SME Talent Week. So this session we are discussing cracking the talent reviews. So as you already know, Shyamla Deshpande is the person who will be taking us through the session, and she is a consultant and HR practitioner and a former HR president at Cafe Coffee Day. So before we move on, I'll kind of briefly set the context once. And when you start doing formal performance reviews, how to structure talent conversations and link that to the growth of the individual and the organization. Do these questions haunt you? Join consultant and veteran HR practitioner Shyamla Deshpande to explore on how to build the performance management systems. What are the metrics to focus upon? And much more. So Shamla will be taking us through a framework in terms of how you can structure your performance reviews and kind of take it ahead from the scratch. So let me also take this opportunity to kind of welcome Shamla to the session. I will give you a brief overview of Shamla and then I'll let Shamla take over. So Shamla is a hotel management graduate actually, and since 2012, sorry 2002, she has since 2000 she has been associated with Cafe Coffee Day. So moving on from that role, since 2012 she has been working in independent projects with Cafe Coffee Day, mostly in HR and L&D. So I'll welcome Shamla herself to give a small brief overview of her profile. So before we move on, I would also like to urge all of you to share your questions, your comments, your views, everything using the chat window on the right-hand side of your screens. Or you can also use your social platforms and you can share your comments or questions using hashtag SME Talent. So without taking much more time, I will hand it over to Shamala to take us through the session. Take this forward.
Good afternoon, folks, and welcome to my session for the SME Talent. We are talking now about performance management and talent reviews. I think before we get into the session, let's first ask ourselves as SMEs, what are the basic questions we should be answering about performance reviews? The first basic question is it for us? And why is it that we as an organization, what is the right time for us to get into a formalized performance management system? I think the most important answer here is the business context and environment is changing so fast. We may just have to do this to survive in whatever that we do. Part is as business owners or small businesses have the ambition to grow, there is a real need for us to integrate our culture and not only work with talent who have been with us, whether they are co-founders or early stage employees, and the newer talent that we bring in. So how do you integrate the line and do it in a very transparent manner? And now, as you scale up, you also need to hire people, people who are better than us, people who come from unique skills. So that point of time when you have to attract talent. So typically when businesses start, the next question is, okay, when is the right time? We've answered the why, coming to the when. When is the right time for us to get into the talent reviews? Now, obviously, we cannot be as owners or professional managers who have, CEOs or COOs of small businesses. You cannot be everywhere. If the team size is 10 or 15, you have a finger on the pulse of your company and you're able to, kind of give your fair share of time to everybody. The other part is when you hire newer talent, there is always this dilemma between the old timers and newcomers. Maybe organizations with 50 to 100 people, you may have an in-house HR. So the question again, the performance training, a performance management system, do I go to a person outside the organization? Do I seek expert? Here my answer to you would be, if you feel intuitively you have it, I would advise you do some reading up, take some help to kickstart the ball rolling and then do it yourself. Yes, I need a performance management software. I've decided whether I'll do it in-house. What kind of tool do I use? There are a plethora of tools available, time-tested tools. There could be probably let me You can do like 360-degree feedback where the manager from every level of the organization. There is something called as a balance scorecard, which we'll talk about more in just a couple of minutes. There is management by objectives, where you set objectives organizationally and then cascade it down to the rest of the organization. And there are also psychometric tools which will help you assess the soft skills and hard skills of the person through various, psychological testing tools which, which are available readily off the shelf. But they need to be administered and they need to be actually interpreted. How do you do it? Again, the question of what am I chasing? Am I chasing numbers or am I chasing qualitative initiatives? How often do I assess? Do I assess monthly? Do I assess quarterly? Do I assess annually? And do I have a pen and paper methodology of doing it? Do I use a software? How do I integrate it? Should it be a part of my ERP? These are the questions that need to be very clear. And once you answer these 5 questions, I think you're more or less set to crack your thought process in terms of what is it that I really need. We are now going to talk about one. In the interest of time, I have chosen one framework which will help you actually translate your vision and strategy into very operational terms. It's a very time-tested tool. It's called the balance scorecard. Typically, it will measure your organization's performance, in people's performance, along 4 quadrants: the financial, the customer, the process, and the people. And all of this, if you look at the illustration on the left side, they're very interlinked. I have the people who will help me achieve my vision, and my organization learns and improves continuously. Only then will I be able to look at what are the processes that I must excel at to look good to my customers and be relevant to my customers for today, not in the immediate context, but from time to come. Know my customers, how well do I serve my customers? Now, if you are able to have the right people with the right skills, and you have invested in their performance, and you are constantly doing process re-engineering to be able to have processes which are relevant to your customer, and you're serving your customer needs and aspirations, definitely you will succeed and you will bring in the numbers at the optimum profitability, and you will be able to deliver shareholder value. So this is a very simplistic premise of what the balance scorecard methodology of assessing performances. If you go to the next slide, you'll see that this kind of a framework helps you make strategy everybody's job. You are able to lay this out and communicate to your team. Everyone, the linkage of my role, my individual role, to the overall strategy. This is very important, because if I do not understand, then I cannot execute what I don't understand. I'm just throwing a shot in the dark. The other thing that a balance scorecard does is it makes sure every individual has the knowledge as to what is my role in the overall game plan, and what are not just what my role is, what are the initiatives I have to take, but helps me look at and achieve measurable outcomes. So I know, am I doing 60% in October? Am I doing by December? Have I achieved 90% of my target? Or, what is that number which I'm trying to achieve? And also, professional organization, and not to play favorites, depends on metrics and depends on, very real about you. It will help you to not only reinforce this, but also help you do your manner. Actually, before you do a balance performance, it is very important, and this is an area where I find simple. What is the difference between a result and, some organizations, you find everyone doing a lot, but not. So driving to that difference, and what are the results? I've illustrated with an example. If you go to the next line in the slide, Basically, you have to put down your measurables and look at what are the activities which will actually results and not of activity. An activity would be satisfying the customer. Customer came to my outlet, I'm a retailer, customer said thank you, okay, this is activity. Now how do I measure a result? You cannot go and say, oh, it feels like the store gives very good customer service. At the end of the day, for it to be featured as a result area, I need to have a system or a process which captures this result. It could be a very simplistic feedback form that a customer fills, which I'm able to collate. It could be a high-tech app that you have where a customer gives you feedback. It could be a net promoter score where you set a target saying my company should achieve a net promoter score of 9, and then you track what they achieve. Or it could be a mystery audit score where you send customers to your store and they actually measure. So in a balanced scorecard methodology, you have to break down your strategy into a financial strategy, a customer service strategy, a process strategy, and a people strategy. Now, each of these strategies will be owned or assigned to relevant parts of your organization. It could be levels in the organization, which is by seniority, senior management, middle management, junior management, and it could also be functional. What is it that the HR department needs to deliver? What is it that the finance needs to deliver? So typically you will have these key result areas, or what we call as KRAs, cascading down from the top of the organization to every role holder in the organization. And a KRA should be set with a very, very measurable target, and the target is what we call as a key performance indicator. And typically, I would advise that don't have a more than 5 to 8 measurable KRAs per role. And let's try and make sure, if I have 50 people, let's try to, as much as it is practically possible, you can have the same KRA, but it can be measured very differently. Now, just to give you an example of how do I make everybody's KRA in the sales team could be to increase sales or achieve a sales target. But how do I differ the KPI? Now, for the sales head, it could be the quality of sales, which says that this particular my sales mix from different targets should be different to align with my overall strategic objective. Whereas the lowermost person in the organization, you would probably measure him by overall sales and the incremental sales that he's got by upselling, or what is his mix of accessories sale to the main product sale. Somewhere in the middle layer, you may have a city manager. So his target would be to get incremental sales out of newer markets or newer geographies or expansion. So you can see here, when you have differing KPIs for the same KRAs of sales, you are able to drive different roles in the organization towards very different objectives. So that gives you a very balanced approach in driving results. And similarly, you can also play around with weightages. So if you have more than 5 or 8 KRAs and some of them are shared, you can increase or decrease the relative importance of these KRAs. So having decided, we know the basics now, difference between results and activities, KRA and KPI. Now let's move directly into that performance management, after all, is cyclical. You can decide the cycle. You can decide whether you want a half-yearly cycle, annual cycle. So typically it follows an annual cycle because that's your budgeting cycle. So in the first area, you have what we call as goal setting. So you set goals for different levels in your organization, and you look at the KRAs and KPIs by goal. And then you go into reviewing performance, which is giving feedback to each level in the organization and looking at, the appraisal meeting. Here, giving feedback becomes very, very critical, and actually conducting that conversation, which is again a matter where people need to develop skill. Everyone finds it very easy to say, hey, you're doing very well. But the minute there is a problem in performance, I think we become, a little cagey about saying it as it is. And then, of course, once the performance review is done, how do I manage my appraisal process in terms of looking at what are the development needs of my team, who needs to, go into different roles, get promoted, and obviously, what is the changes in compensation, rewards, recognition, etc. That's typically a a cycle that you follow. It's a 3-step cycle, and each of those 3 steps will have different elements in it. Look at, we keep saying he performs well, she performs well. What leads to good performance? I think at a basic level, performance is made up of 2 very, very distinct areas. One is called as competence, which is nothing but a measure of your sum total of your knowledge, skill, and experience. It you acquire by formal education. A lot of it you also acquire by having worked in different industries or different scales of organization, which is what we call as experience. The other thing is very intrinsic, which is called as commitment. And performance is nothing but a multiplier of competence and commitment. And both are required, but reality is that different people have competence and commitment at different levels within an organization. But the good part is, you as a manager, you as an owner of a business, or you as a COO can actually change this equation. Now, all of you agree that if you increase competence at the same level of commitment, you will get a better performance, or competence being static, if commitment levels go up, you will get a better So manager really, by the way he addresses the issues that his organization and his team are going through, could be and diagnoses them well, would be able to actually drive a far better performance. And typically we see that it's good practice if 30% of your time as a business owner you actually spend on people issues, so that you will be able to deliver. Now, I've put a very simple grid here. It's a 4x4 grid, which maps people based on their competencies and their commitment. So let's look at them one by one. Now, obviously, everyone would like to have an employee with the highest level of competence and the highest level of commitment, because this employee needs very little direction and hardly any control, and you'll be able to delegate. And who wouldn't love to have an employee like this? But a lot of work needs to go into us as leaders or us as business owners to be able to drive that competence and fire up the individual to higher levels of commitment. It could be how the person buys into your leadership, buys into the vision of the organization. Some people in the organization, so if I go to the left, top left quadrant, these people are very, very committed, but could be relatively lower in terms of competence. Now, these people, like we say, hire for attitude and train for skills. So if I'm able to invest in their training and invest in spending time with this person, once the person acquires the skills, the level of control really lesser. So you will find that most organizations, especially at a startup, you need to, or SME needs to spend time in developing people. Don't expect a magic wand that you, when I talk about training, this is really not where you send people out for training, but it's really about what is the on-job work experience where you're spending time coaching and mentoring your team. You will have organizations and people in those organizations who don't do well. You need to, they are very high maintenance employees, neither are they very competent or of questionable commitment. Here it's really for us to take those stuff. I carry this person on as a passenger and lag my and how do I handle the conversation to be able to deal with this person? Corner, you will we are very high competence, but commitment levels could be low because I have this extremely highly skilled person. I can't question his competence, but commitment could be low because people have not spent time with this person. He has not bought into the vision, or just may not be happy with the peer group in the organization. So here you need to draw this person out and get the person to actually participate more in the organization and draw out. So if you are able to manage your employees into these areas, you'll actually be able to diagnose for yourself what works. So I think no longer one size fits all. who needs training, where do I need to delegate, where do I need to have a participatory style of leadership, and where it is telling, I think really it's not worth it in today's day and time and marketplace. The person needs to go on a performance improvement plan. In the next two slides, what I've given you is actually a tool. I'm not going to go through it. So typically, take a problem employee, go through this flow chart, and you'll know, is it a problem because the person doesn't know what the job is? Is it because of competence? Is it because of commitment? Or is it because of motivation? It's a very simple tool, and we would typically, first time managers or people who are getting formally inducted into professionalizing this organization could use this tool to be able to diagnose your performance. I'll be happy to take questions at this stage. I've reached the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shyamla, for that wonderful session. So, a couple of good takeaways from that: the balanced scorecard, the competency and commitment, and of course the important fact that you need to spend time to develop your people. So, I have a few questions here. So, I'll quickly move into the questions. I think we have around 4 minutes or 5 minutes to take up these questions, and so I'll quickly jump into the first question. So, so this Niharika is asking Nihar is asking, what psychometric tools do you prefer when you're doing performance management or during performance reviews?
There are multiple psychometric tools. I don't want to be prescriptive here. I think it's more about what stage your organization is and what do I need. So there are tools like 16PF, there are tools like MBTI, there are tools like there is an organization called Jombe which has some very fantastic tools which are very simple. Depends on whether you need the tool for frontline or mid-level or what layer of the organization. So I think this is a question which cannot be answered very simply unless I have the organizational context.
Okay, okay. Thank you so much. So another question is from Bhumika, and she's asking how effective is training when it comes to a scenario where there's low competency and high commitment. So, is there also a question? So I have another follow-up question. Is there another question of actually potential of the employee also adding up to the equation?
Okay, now let me give you an example of someone who's done his MBA 10 years back and is working in marketing, very committed employee, but probably did his education before the digital revolution and this entire digital marketing. Now, if the commitment levels are high and what we call as the learnability quotient of the employee is high, then I think definitely I would invest in training, performance coaching, give the person a time, maybe 6 months, and then take a call. So yes, training is something that needs to be done because all of us pass through every year. If you look at people coming out of college, they're smarter and smarter because the syllabus keeps changing. So it's a wonderful way training to impart new skills.
Okay. Thank you so much for taking up that question. So we have another question here. Niharika is asking, what can we do to encourage conversations around performance reviews and motivate managers to have this conversation? I also have a follow-up question to it in terms of, an additional to it in terms of probably first-time managers who are not so experienced. How do you handle the whole, culture there in terms of having a, proper performance review, performance conversations, having, removing biases from the whole process. So how do you go about it?
I think there are very tailor-made training programs which first-time managers need to go, because please understand that first-time managers are promoted because they're very good at what they do, which is a very individual skill. But when they become managers, they need to spend 30 to 40% of the time with the team. So team handling skills, giving feedback skills are all skills which need to be taught. And so training again here would be critical on people processes. And there are a lot of simulations you can do. There are a lot of YouTube videos on how to actually give, do performance reviews. So don't wait only for your organization to conduct it. But there are, free tools available in the market. And I'm sure even if you read People Matters, there are lots of articles on performance reviews and conversations. Tough, but can be done. can be done provided you invest time in it. And for managers to be able to do it, it's a culture. If you see your boss doing it with you, you will do it with your person reporting into you. So it's a culture which needs to cascade down.
Okay. So I think we are at the end of the session. We don't have much time left. So I think I'll have to end it here. So whatever other questions you'll have, I'll try and share it with you so that you can answer them, and we'll share it with the viewers. So thank you so much for taking your time, sharing your wonderful insights on performance management, balance scorecard. There are a lot of important takeaways from the session. I hope all of you must have taken a lot of learnings from the session. Thank you so much for taking your time. Thank you to
Thank
all our
you.
listeners for listening in and sharing your questions, views. And so we have the next session at 7 p.m. today by Mark Walsley, and he's talking about talent analytics and what it means to SMEs. So I hope you all will be tuning into that session as well at 7 p.m. Thank you all and have a great day.